Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome. My name is Katinka György-Vince on behalf of Követ Association for Sustainable Economies from Hungary as part of the LIFEproETV consortium. Today's webinar's title you can see on the screen, ETV as a tool for internalizing the performance of green innovations in the environmental footprint of products and organizations. So I will just quickly take you through the housekeeping rules in the next slide, and then I will tell you about today's webinar's objectives and tell you a little bit of our speakers for today. Yes, so we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the webinar is being recorded, and this recording will be available for you on the LIFEproETV website together with the presentations of our speakers. Your microphones and cameras are turned off at the moment and will be staying like that throughout the session, but your voice is important for us. So please leave your questions or comments in the chat box, which you will find in the bottom right corner of your screen. And we will come back to the questions at the end of the session. Thank you. Also, we have prepared a little Mentimeter survey just with a few questions for you. And we will provide the code and the QR code and the entrance code for that at the end of the session. So I encourage you to stay until the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much. And now let's see the objectives for today. We have listed 3 objectives for this webinar. We would like to highlight the links among ETV and other environmental schemes dedicated to environmental management and environmental performance of products and organizations. And we have taken examples for you for EMAS, EPD, and eco-labeling. We will provide information on how ETV as a scheme for verifying the performance of environmental technologies may contribute to the certification of environmental performance of companies and products under other schemes, and also to improve the recognition on and market position of the ETV scheme. So these are our objectives for today's webinar. Thank you. And just about the agenda, just a few words basically about the speakers. First, we will have Ms. Izabela Ratman-Klozinska, project coordinator of LIFEproETV project, and on behalf of ETV from Poland. We will also have Mr. Balázs Sára. He's an expert of methods and tools applying life cycle approach. He provides consulting and training services concerning life cycle assessment, environmental product declarations, and carbon footprint of products. He's an EPD auditor and technical expert of the Italian EPD program on behalf of the ICMQ certification body. He lives in Italy, but he works on an international scale. After Mr. Balázs Sára, it will be Mr. Björn Erik Lönn, Chair of Board of the Global Eco-Labeling Network. Since December 1993, has been working for the Nordics One Eco-Label from Oslo, Norway, whereby a senior advisor for international affairs from August 2015. He is the director of the Board of Global Eco-Labeling Network from 2006 and also elected chair from 2015. He is representing the Global Eco-Labeling Network in ISO work with ISO 14020 series of standards on environmental information and in the UN Environmental One Planet program on consumer information. And our last but not least speaker will be Mr. Lennart Schleicher. By profession, he is a biologist and an environmental verifier. He is the owner of and CEO of the environmental consulting company MBEX and president of the Association of Environmental Sustainability and Environmental Professionals, VNU. He has implemented the European Environmental Management System EMAS in more than 70 production plants in 22 countries, won the European EMAS Award twice, and was later jury member for these awards. He is member of the German delegation of the EMAS Experts Committee that is advising the European Commission, and he was also the head of the working group in the revision process of the EMAS annexes. So that is just briefly the introduction, and now the floor is yours, Izabela. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katinka, for this introduction. Actually, I think that the topic is quite important for those who are interested in sustainable products that are quite important right now and quite high on the agenda of the European... Sorry, somebody's calling me. Which is quite high on the European agenda right now. So let me just block it. Okay. However, environmental technologies are very often contributors to those to the sustainability of those products. Therefore, we decided to present to you today the scheme that we are developing and that we are promoting under the LIFEproETV project. This is a scheme which is dedicated to environmental technologies. And it has been so far supported by the European Commission under an EU ETV program, which will no longer be the case beginning of next year. Therefore, what we are trying to do with this LIFEproETV project is to, first of all, to build a strong market acceptance and recognition for the scheme, and secondly, try to develop a kind of a business case for ETV so that companies, providers of new technologies, but also buyers of new technologies can see a clear benefit in this scheme. So first of all, let me try to explain to you what is ETV, because I'm pretty sure that many of you have never heard about this scheme. So it is a voluntary scheme. It is dedicated basically to new environmental technologies to help them get on the market. And it has practically a twofold kind of an objective. On one hand, it provides an opportunity to verify the performance of those technology by a third party in an independent, objective way. And through that, it at the same time is a source of objective, credible, and transparent, and first of all, market relevant information on the performance of environmental technologies and the benefits that they are delivered. And this information is quite relevant to a number of actors of the environmental technologies market, because it is important for technology providers, for the buyers, but also for the regulatory bodies who often do not get sufficient knowledge about the innovations, to the permitting bodies, but also to investors, and finally to policymakers. So with the information ETV is providing, it is supposed to help making better choices on the technologies, and also support the decision-making processes that are related to investment and to the purchase of new technologies. So what ETV actually does, it is a system, it's a scheme that provides in an impartial and a credible way that the claims that are made by technology providers of environmental technologies about their performance are true and are based on a sound scientific data. The key three advantages of ETV are that, first of all, this is a scheme which is ICO standardized. There is an environmental management standard behind it. It's on environmental technology verification. And I had the pleasure to be one of the co-authors of this standard. And this standard defines a robust and a transparent procedure on how to do the verification of performance. Secondly, because this is an ICO standard recognized in a number of countries, it ensures a global recognition for this type of procedure. Another important aspect of ETV is the fact that this is quality and impartiality assured scheme. The basis for ETV are the test data on the performance of technologies, and these must be developed compliant to the requirements of another ISO standard, which is ISO 17025. Some of you may know the standard. This is a standard applied by laboratories, testing laboratories and calibration laboratories. And secondly, the verification bodies who are doing those verifications must demonstrate compliance to an ISO standard 17020. And this is the standard for inspection bodies. In particular, for ETV needs, those standard, the requirements refer to the inspection bodies type A. That means the most restrictive requirements concerning the impartiality of doing the activities. And third, very unique feature of ETV is that this is a scheme that is dedicated for early market stage innovations. So basically for innovations. And why? Because the way the verifications are done are not based on a predefined set of criteria that are related to the performance. This is flexible and very much technology specific, while at the same time, ETV ensures a similar quality and impartiality framework that is observed for any certification or compliance schemes that are used for mature technologies. So what actually ETV offers, just to summarize, first of all, it's a proven, robust process to verify the performance of technologies, environmental technologies, and I'll explain that in a moment. Secondly, it is a source of credible and transparent information about technologies, innovative technologies. Thirdly, it is more flexible than certification because it's, as I said, it's adapted to the technology characteristics, and it gives credibility to technology developers, while at the same time, because it delivers this information on the performance, it reduces the risks of purchasers and users. So it is quite important to define what do we understand as an environmental technology under the ETV scheme. First of all, technologies are defined in the ISO standards as products, processes, or services, which have to demonstrate an environmental added value. So they need to be more beneficial or less adverse in terms of environmental impacts compared to current solutions used in similar conditions, in similar situations currently. So these could be different treatment technologies, recycling technologies, secondary raw materials, air pollution monitoring technologies, and so on. But this could be also measurement equipment, which is related to any kinds like monitoring technologies, but also to different samplers, probes, and so on. The key issue behind it is that these must be technologies with an environmental objective behind them. So solutions that are either addressing an environmental problem or creating new opportunities by providing a solution to an environmental problem. In the bottom line, you can see the different technology areas that used to be defined for the EU ETV program, which will no longer be the case. Nevertheless, these technology areas give you a good understanding on what type of solutions are we discussing under ETV. So the key eligibility requirements for ETV are focused on two very important aspects. First of all, if we decide to verify technology under ETV, it must be mature enough. In simple words, it must be an identical product that will be later on offered on the market. So to define this maturity level, we are looking in particular whether the technology, the candidate technology, demonstrates a stable operation in normal conditions of operation, and whether there is data to confirm that, whether different variables that are influencing the performance are defined, and this could be variables beginning from the type of material the technology is intended for. It could be the process parameters and different other constraints and limitations. And third, whether the maintenance and operational procedures are also defined, because some environmental impacts may be associated with those procedures. So this is one of the requirements, key requirements. And the second one is already very closely related to the environmental aspects, is the compliance of the candidate technology with the definition of an environmental technology. And to check this, we have a dedicated process. This process is to define if there is the demonstration of the environmental added value, so the reduced environmental impact. And we are considering this environmental added value from the point of view of the life cycle approach, which means our procedure assumes looking or identifying in the first range a life stage or life stages where this technology really demonstrates a difference, whether positive or negative, compared to conventional solutions used currently. You see the list of environmental impact parameters that we are considering in this analysis. And secondly, once we identify those significant differences, they are assessed by the way of an expert judgment, which is allowed under the ISO 17020 standard, to identify whether at a minimum the positive or negative aspects are balancing And if they are not balancing, then of course such technology is typically excluded from verification because it's not meeting the definition of an environmental technologies. Sometimes some of the aspects we are considering under those environmental impacts may go up to defining new parameters to be verified, environmental parameters, just to deliver a transparent picture on the overall performance of the technology. The central elements of ETV are actually two key elements. First of all, performance claim. So this is what the client comes to us to be verified. And this is typically a set of technical specifications on the technical and functional performance of a technology with defined conditions of application of this technology. And the second thing is the file of test data to back up this performance. It has to be test data which is quality assured, as I said, generated following the requirements of ISO 17025, and it has to, of course, refer to the claim and to the conditions of the operation. I'm not going to present in detail how ETV works, because this is actually the standardized procedure, just to highlight some important facts that, of course, the process starts with the contacting phase, and all of the stages of ETV are actually done in a dialogue with the proposer. So after an application phase where we actually check if the technology is a good candidate and agree on what parameters are to be verified, we move to the development of the specific verification protocol. So this is exactly a planning document according to which the whole technology the performance is verified. And the core part of this specific verification protocol is the definition on the test design that defines exactly the requirements, how the test data that are needed to confirm the claim or to verify the claim actually need to be generated. If the test data that is provided by the technology providers meets those requirements, then the testing is not necessary. If it doesn't meet those requirements, the testing is necessary with an accredited laboratory. Typically, we get the test report after the testing phase, and based on the test data, we are able to verify the performance, which not necessarily may present the same numbers as the initial performance claim. Once we get the verification completed, we produce a statement of verification and a verification report, which are actually the key products of the verification. As I said, the verification bodies, the verifications are performed by dedicated verification bodies. You can see the list of those bodies on the map. There are actually 7 of them, including my institute, which is also a verification body. I am the manager of it. All of those verification bodies are accredited by national accreditation bodies for compliance to ISO 17020, to perform verifications in line with ISO 7, in line with the ETV standard. So I said about the 2 key outputs of ETV. It's the verification report and the verification statement. Both those documents, when you look at it from the perspective of the inspection body standards, can be recognized as inspection reports or inspection certificates. And moreover, when you look also into other directives of the European Commission, both documents, so and in particular the ETV statement of verification, meets the document, meets the requirements of an independent third-party certification and issued by a third-party certifier. So this also highlights somehow how these 2 documents can be used for different purposes, starting from green public procurement, probably also as an input information to the different schemes that we are going to discuss today. So going back right now to the topic of our today's presentation, I wanted to highlight 3 important aspects of ETV. I know that ETV differs a lot from the other schemes, but when you look at it at ETV as a performance-based scheme, you will see that it delivers actually information on the technical and functional performance of an environmental technology, which by definition is to result in a reduced environmental impact. Secondly, when you look at ETV as an environmental scheme, you will see that it is assessing also the environmental performance, looking from the life cycle perspective, and checking whether an environmental problem or a new opportunity can be created with a reduced environmental impact compared to conventional technologies. Last but not least, ETV is a scheme which is dedicated to innovative technologies. So through the assessment of the environmental added value, we're trying to determine actually how the novelty which has been introduced to the way the technology is designed, to the raw materials that are being used, to the energy which is involved, to the production process, how this all translates into this reduced environmental impacts. So just to very quickly, what kind of information ETV provides on a real example. This is an example of an environmental technology that has been verified. It's a request. Actually, you see in the description that it addresses a specific environmental problem, which is the issue of plastic treatment from the agricultural waste. So it provides a new solution, which is an innovative process for the recycling based on some principles from the textile sector. You see also that the parameters that have been verified refer to the technical performance, but also to some operational parameters that are related to the use of this technology. So, well, as I said, the basis for our discussions is to see how ETV can go and how it can contribute or benefit or complement other certification schemes that are related to the environmental performance. Just very quickly, 2 slides to finish. We have done on the LIFEproETV a couple of investigations just to see how ETV works with the schemes that are dedicated to products, so mainly environmental product declaration and product environmental footprint. And we are aware that those schemes differ a lot from ETV in terms of objectives, since they are more to provide a big picture and the comprehensive picture of all environmental impacts of a product, while ETV is really focusing on the technical and functioning performance, although you will see that the definition of technology involves also product. However, it needs to be highlighted that we are talking here about products for industrial applications. So it's more like types of materials rather than, I would say, consumption products. So we think that for engineers and for product designers, ETV can help as a source of information to allow them to choose the most sustainable option for their product project. This could go also very well in line with the Eco-Design Directive that, as you definitely know, will be extended in terms of technology areas, but also objectives. And finally, we also think that since ETV is actually offering technologies with a reduced environmental impact, these technologies may be choices for the manufacturers to improve the environmental performance of their products, because technologies are also contributing to the overall environmental performance of a product. And this could be also a decision for investments going very well in line with the green taxonomy requirements. Concerning environmental management schemes, of course, these schemes are much broader than ETV and have, again, a different objective. So just to create those environmental management schemes that are able to identify, to control, and to organize different organizations in a way that they are constantly improving their environmental performance. So here we see that ETV could be used as a facilitator or as a promoter for any technology innovations, any upgrades or modernizations, and help to guide investors which technologies to choose if they want to achieve better performance concerning the key environmental objectives and targets that have been defined for EMAS and also for ISO 14001 schemes in terms of aspects like energy efficiency, like resource productivity, or finally reduced waste generation, and also find solutions that may help them get a better compliance with the regulatory requirements or even going beyond them. So this is all from my side. I think I've managed to present you the opportunities as well as the scheme. If there are any questions, just please put them at the chat, unless if there are any very hot reactions right now, I guess we can give the floor to the next panelists.
Okay, thank you, Isabella. I try to share my screen, if it is okay. Can you see my screen, Katinka? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the possibility to contribute to this discussion today. And thank you for the presentation from Katinka. So I just go immediately to talk about the content, what I would like to talk today. So my main topic is the Environmental Product Declarations, the EPD world. So what is it? What is the trend in this scheme? What you need to do this an EPD, and what you get out of an EPD work. And I would like to do this always with an eye on possible synergies with the ETV system, as it is our main goal today. So of course, this is my perspective. I work mainly on LCA and EPD projects. So I try to collect my ideas about how these two initiatives could, let's say, have common grounds and possible synergies. Okay, so what is it? Talking about EPD. So EPD is, according to the ISO 40025 standard, it is a type 3 environmental declaration. And EPDs are always managed by program operators. And there are a lot of program operators all around the world. These are just some of the logos. There are plenty of them. So they are responsible to managing these their own EPD programs. And for main product categories, EPDs refer to specific rules, how to get and how to obtain an EPD for specific product categories. And I just put here some examples. For example, there are already European standards for construction products, or specific European standard for electronic and electrical products. And there are many other product category rules for different product categories within the different EPD programs. What is important to know is that to obtain an EPD, you need to do a life cycle assessment and about the product or service or the object of your EPD. So a background LCA report has to be prepared. And then a public EPD document is then prepared based on the findings of this LCA report. In this EPD document, you can summarize your company, you can describe your company, you describe the technical performance of the product. Usually there is a content declaration, and then you summarize the LCA results. And you can also add additional environmental information. So basically a public document that summarizes all information about your product concerning its environmental performance. There is always a third-party verification of the LCA study and the EPD document. EPDs are voluntary at the moment. So anyone can decide to go for an EPD, a producer. And what is important, that there are no predefined performance limits to get an EPD. Anyone can do it. Any producer can go for an EPD. So it's not like only for the green products, let's say. It's anybody who wants to declare its environmental performance. Just 2 words about life cycle assessment, because I'm sure many of the participants know about it, but just to be sure that everyone understands what does it mean LCA behind an EPD. So also here we have an ISO standard, the 40040 and 44, and the important is the life cycle approach that we use when we do a life cycle study of a product. So all life cycle phases are considered. And these tiny arrows shows here that for each step of the life cycle, we take materials and energy from the environment, and then we emit. We have emissions, we have waste that then goes back to the environment, and so all these inputs and outputs has potential environmental impact. So then the art, let's say, of the LCA is how to, let's say, declare or quantify these environmental impacts with some indicators. These indicators that can refer to resource consumption, energy consumption, climate change, or other environmental problems. And even an LCA can produce results about waste, the total waste produced, hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste, and other indicators are available. The important is that we have numbers at the end, so we can compare different life cycle scenarios and to identify where are the critical points, where are the hotspots, where are the improvement possibilities when I analyze environmental impacts with this holistic approach. Just an example of an EPD. Here is the link in the slide if someone wants to download this full document. I selected an example that is just to show that, okay, as I mentioned, EPD can be obtained for any kind of product. But I selected something that is called this like greenstone industrial construction aggregate, just to show that this is something. It's a product that surely its name, let's say, like showing some kind of innovation, something that they believe this is a product that can do something for the environment. In fact, this is something produced from recovered materials, and so it can substitute natural resources. So just to have some connection maybe with the ETV world, and so it's a document, an EPD. It has it can have some pages, and so for example there is a description of the product as I told you with the technical characteristics. Then there is a clear presentation about the life cycle system that was modeled, that was considered. So all the starting from the core manufacturing procedure, then what was considered upstream and what was considered downstream from the production. So you have a clear understanding what is analyzed, and then you have the tables about the environmental performance. And so these are for different kind of environmental impacts, and you have the numbers for each life cycle phases. Okay, what are the trends in this EPD scheme? So this is the trend, for example, that I show you here is about construction products that are compliant with the European product category rules, the 15,804. As you can see in the last 10 years, how the numbers of EPDs started to grow, and now it is starting to be quite an exponential increase of the number of EPDs. The colors are showing the different program operators. So as you can see, and this is also my experience, since I have been working on this LCA field, that some 20-25 years ago, we were still talking about why LCA is needed, what is the good to doing an LCA, and even if you have an LCA, why to go for an EPD? And then about 10, 15 years ago, that interest started to grow quite substantially. And now what we are living now in the EPD community or in the EPD world, that there is a wave of EPDs that are really growing. And of course, they started for the Scandinavian and Europe, Western European countries, and from the United States, but now they are really expanding and growing also in other parts of the world. And here I take the opportunity to say that in the LIFEproETV project, I see two partners, Enea from Italy and Követ from Hungary, and I had the chance to work with these organizations even 10, 15, and 20 years ago, and I know that they, for example, has really an important role that in these countries these topics and these schemes and methods started to have to spread, let's say, in their respective countries. Okay, so I show you also an example that is really connected very much to my professional activity in the EPD Italy scheme. I am an auditor and technical expert. And here, for example, what we see is that 1 year ago there were 28 EPDs about this kind of products, and then today we have 100 EPDs about electronic and electrical products. And what is also interesting, that EPD owners, so the companies, organizations that obtain these EPDs are not only from, of course, from Italy, they are also from other European countries, and also from all around the world, from America and also from Asia. So it is really a widespread trend that companies are going for this kind of for this certification. And behind this 100 EPD, there are hundreds of LCA studies, because in one EPD even more products are included. So it's not just 100 products, it's more a couple of hundreds of product LCAs are in these documents. What are the driving forces behind this expanding EPD activity? So my experience is that, first of all, from the private sector, so surely private procurement of large organizations are very important. They start supply chain management, sustainable supply chain management, and LCA and EPD are getting an important role in their initiatives. And we have, more specifically for the construction sector, the sustainable building certification schemes that are voluntary schemes, but they also already the main schemes offer credits for appliance that do LCAs or using construction products that has an EPD. So these are generally speaking driving forces from the private sector, and of course important initiatives are from the public sector, public procurement in different national activities we can see, and also talking about the EU level, the EU policy is very important for spreading the LCA approach, and even it also EPD has a place within this EU policy, talking about the circular economy action plan. And what is really interesting that we are experiencing now, how the relatively new sustainable product initiative and the eco design for sustainable products regulation could have an impact about still to that LCA and related EPDs gain even more importance. So generally speaking, we understand that EPD in business-to-business communication about environmental performance is getting more and more important. And what I also experience with my customers, that they always call me that, okay, my supplier, my customer wants data from me, wants data or want indicators about my environmental performance. So there is this need of data within the supply chain of products. Another, let's say, very generic summary about the trends in this kind of requirements, how in procurement systems or in certification schemes, what is the trend now concerning LCA and EPD? So there are many programs where already the existence of an LCA or EPD is sufficient. I call it like analyze and report your environmental performance. These are, let's say, a first level of approach. Then there are already other initiatives where improvement has to be demonstrated, for example, versus a baseline. So it's not enough that I declare my environmental performance. I have to show that I'm improving compared to some initial idea or compared to a baseline. And the final level, the more restrictive level, is when there are also some kind of rating systems or cap to that cap limits that you have to reach concerning the environmental indicators. So this is, as I try to show it with you, that we are going from the generic requirement of, okay, just the existent is okay, we are going towards more stricter requirements that also then step by step, it's not enough to declare, it's also some kind of improvement as needed. And another trend is that we are going from a voluntary approach to a mandatory approach. So what you need when you do an LCA and then the related EPD. So of course you need data on technologies and manufacturing processes. So, and when you talk about data, you need data about material consumption. Here I include also resources or other materials and water. You need information about energy consumptions, waste production, emissions. And so you start from your core process, from your manufacturing process. But then you need data also from all the upstream processes. So what happens in the supply chain, and then also about the downstream. So what your product is going to be distributed and used, and then after the usage, it is handled as a waste, and there is some end-of-life processing of the materials. So, and here, for example, I just a detail, a technical detail, that, for example, in the EPDs of construction products, now the end-of-life modeling is mandatory. So I am a producer of a construction product. I have to quantify the environmental impact of the end-of-life phase. And this is sometimes really very challenging because you do not have real information what is going on in the end of life of my product. And as I showed you the trends, the future is probably that improvement is needed. So it's not enough to quantify my environmental performance. You have to think about how to improve year by year your environmental performance. And so here, for example, I think that looking at this list, I think these are all elements where the ETV as a kind of activity, as a kind of verification scheme, can have like an input to these issues. So surely about data, about the different manufacturing processes and technologies, and of course, improvement is a basic concept in the ETV system. So it can give like new and innovative technologies for companies that are going for an EPD. And what you get out of an EPD, so surely you as a producer, you have information about direct and environment and indirect impacts of your product. You have verified mass balances about your manufacturing process. You understand where are the hotspots from environmental point of view of your product life cycle. It's really interesting to see how during an LCA and then the EPD verification process, really it is true that problems that were hidden from a company concerning the environmental issues are going to be unhidden. So they just open their eyes that, okay, here are the issues that where we can improve. And in fact, you can identify your options for improvement, where it is good to improve in your life cycle. And if we talk on a higher level, if you collect all these EPDs, and in fact, in the website of the program operators, you can find a lot of EPDs, you have really a huge database about environmental performance of products. First of all, you have the product category rules that already gives you an understanding about what are the main issues for a certain product type. And then, of course, having all this information available from different producers, you can have a look on different alternative products and technologies. You have the possibility to benchmark yourself. And of course, analyzing these reports, these declarations, you have an idea about where are the hotspots of a certain product type. And so here instead, well, I think that all these things that the EPD world offers, even on the level of the producer and on a higher level, like a scheme, like an initiative, can have an input for the ETV initiative, because at the end, you can have ideas and inputs from the EPDs where is a need for innovative technologies, if you apply a new technology, what can be the improvements compared to other existing alternative products or technologies. So, to summarizing my thoughts about common grounds and synergies between EPD and ETV, I think it's important that both are solutions to assess environmental performance. Both have a life cycle perspective. Of course, I believe probably it's much more restrictive in EPD. In the ETV, however, as Isabella said, it is also important that you use life cycle perspective. And both schemes need to provide evidence on added value and improvement. This is mainly for EPD, as I told you, as I try to send you the message. It is, let's say, a trend. And in ETV, it is a basic need that you have to show your added value compared to alternative solutions. So benchmarking is an important element for both schemes, so to compare yourself with others. So what I think is that EPD is an industry-driven solution. It is, we can say that today it has an existing market value, it is spreading. And so my impression is that ETV can foster environmental improvement in the EPD world, as I described you more in detail in the previous slides. So thank you very much for your attention, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Balázs, for your presentation, and special thank you to you for highlighting the synergies between EPD and ETV. And I think we should save the questions for the end of the session, as we are running out of time a little bit. So I would like to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Björn-Erik Lönn, Chair of Board Global Eco-Labeling Network. Mr. Lönn, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon from Oslo, Norway. I will elaborate from a little other perspective the information about environmental higher performance of companies, services, or the goods. Actually, the most important feature of eco-labels is that it is always connected to the product. It's not connected to the company. Well, only if it's a service, so the production site and the service provider is the same, then naturally it's being a hotel or a restaurant or so on. I have been working for many years within the eco-labeling from Norway, and then been involved in the international perspective in the global eco-labeling network, and I will present that shortly. The eco-labels are defined in the 14020 series of standards, where we have these general principles in the ISO 14020 listing up those different types of environmental product information, the self-declared claims, the so-called type 2 labels, the eco-labels, so-called type 1, and the EPDs, the type 3 as presented by Balas. And about the EPDs, there are also some more standards in that series referring to how the product category rules, which are actually the standards, how they should be made for the EPDs, and then a very fresh one standard in the ISO series on mutual recognition between the EPDs, because they are not the standards, or the product category rules in the different programs are not always the same. So that's important to follow up. And the global eco-labeling network is, we have 39 eco-labeling organizations, and established back in 1994, and support naturally our members and advocate the type 1 eco-labels compared to other and the distinctions with other less credible green marks or statements. And we do have a good position within the public green procurement globally, and I come back to that later on. As you know, you will have these slides available afterwards, so I won't dwell within all the details. Here you see the map, and as you can see, there's a good spread globally of the schemes, eco-label type 1 life cycle based schemes. There's a lot of schemes in Southeast Asia. Normally and often the labels are national, and sometimes they are regional. And if a product is labeled with one of these labels, that label can naturally also follow that product into other markets. So in that sense, some of our members are very global, especially one or two working within the electronics. You have the EPIT labels on all kind of electronics, like also the TCO certified, a Swedish company and an American company. Among our members, we have type 1 eco-labels in both, as mentioned, as regional. We have the EU eco-label, which is covering all EU EEA area. That's EU and the three, Norway, Iceland, and is it Luxembourg? No, Liechtenstein. So it's the EEA countries are covered, and we have competent bodies of eco-labeling for the EU eco-label in every country. That can be found on the EU eco-label homepage. We have the Nordics One eco-label, where I've been working, that was initiated by the governments in the 5 Nordic countries back in 1989. We have the Blauer Engel, the oldest, the German eco-label, started up already in 1977. And we have in Sweden, as mentioned, this TCO certified, but also a good environmental choice, which is a NGO, owned by the biggest NGO, environmental NGO in Sweden, and more focusing on naturally then on business to consumer information. We have the Milieukeur in Netherlands on non-food products, and they have a special program on the way to Planet Proof, they call it, which is only on food stuff produced in Europe. We have also members in Ukraine and in Russia. And then there are also other eco-labels that are following the ISO 14025, but 24, sorry, but they are not members of again Umweltzeichen in Austria. There's one in Catalonia who is applying for membership now, and I know that there are also in France and in Czechia, and probably also in Poland and Hungary. In Poland, it was, I think, when you contact the competent bodies of the EU eco-label, they normally have also, in some countries, national labels in parallel, sometimes also with the same requirements, with the same standards as a basis. And then there are these certified single-issue product labels that are very common, mostly on raw materials or commodities, like the EU organic label, and then this originally World Wildlife Fund started up the FSC on forest management and on marine fisheries, the MSC, and you have the fair trade, which is not so much an environmental, it's mostly a social label, but these are also certified, but they are then more single issue and not the multiple criteria, multiple issue that we cover in eco-labels. So the characteristics of type 1 life cycle eco-label is that it's voluntary, it's a market-based tool, and based on the standard 14024. We have this life cycle-based approach, and referring to what we learn about the EPDs, we always include also the end of life and the product quality and the longevity. The quality of the product and the longevity of the product is also a very important feature for defined in eco-labeling with, for instance, mandatory requirements on services to be provided for updating and so on. It is multiple criteria, and one thing that is also very important for the market actors is that the criteria are transparent. The standard development is made in a multi-stakeholder process where it's not only the industry, it's the authorities, it's the NGOs, environmental and consumer organizations are represented, and everything is made. The standard or the criteria is developed very publicly. Where you have a public hearing where anyone can come up with comments for a draft document, and we also present these comments and how we react on these comments. And it is based on independent third-party verification. And then one feature that is very important, and this is a direct comparison, we are comparing products in the actual market within the product category. We define the product category, what kind of products can be included, and we know what are the bad performance or what should every possible eco-label product, what kind of features, environmental features should they have, and how should that be documented. It is only for the best environmental performance type 1 eco-label. It's not for those who have good intentions only, and it is translating very complicated environmental requirements to a single label. So it is a win-win-win situation, both for our producers to gain more market accessibility, market shares, for the buyers for them to have an easy way of considering the environmental performance, and naturally, in the end, we are doing this for the environment to reduce the impact from the consumption from the production and the consumption that we are living in or using. And it is important to have the full trust from consumers and the confidence, and it has a function to show how the product is performing, and by that also educating the consumers to look for the most essential issues to be covered. So from what I've told you so far, the characteristics are that we do standards per product category. We review them and revise them. So when you have once got a license to use the eco-label, you must be prepared that it's time limited, and then there will be probably stricter standards coming out in a new version, and then you have to apply again. It is about the products on the actual market. It's not all the products in the market or a fictive market. It is based on knowledge in the market you introduce the label. And normally it is hurdles that you have to fulfill and document that you fulfill by normally some analysis or tests results from a ISO 17025 certified laboratory. And that specified in the document, in the standard, we specify the documentation that should be presented and do the independent verification and certification. Now, the different products that can be covered, the Nordics one, as mentioned, we have been doing this for more than 30 years, and in the beginning it was tough to get started, to get the first licenses and have the first standards published. Now we have some close to 60 different criteria sets or standards published. They are covering very different product groups and can be, for instance, like a product category for furniture. The standard is covering both office furniture, private furniture, wooden furniture, metal, and so on. Or textiles are both from everything from fibers to jeans or to any working cloth, and so on. Building materials are also very broad and used, and the difference between an eco-labeled building material and a building material with an EPD is that the eco-labeled building material is above or below how you see it. They have strict requirements, normally hurdles for different parameters that have been documented, and it is considering, I would say, more in balance the issues of climate change, the issues of hazardous chemicals, the quality of the product, and the end of use of the product, the possibilities of recycling and so on. From a consumer perspective, there's naturally those products that you find in the grocery shops, and everything from we started very many programs have started with paper products or cleaning agents, detergents, and then developed further on. And now, as you can see from the list, we are now also within financial services with investment funds or residential buildings, and have quite a big success with the Nordics One in these two product groups in the Nordic markets. And then among the other GEN members, they are covering, some are specialized, like the Indian eco-label is specialized in building materials because it is very closely connected. It's run by the Confederation of Indian Industries, and they have also the responsibilities for the Indian Green Building certification. And in the Indian Green Building certification, they want eco-labeled products. They are not satisfied with the EPD because then the EPD based materials, you have to, as a buyer, understand and calculate more. If you have an eco-label building material into a Green Building Council certification, you know that you are above a certain level, which is among the best products. Others are, as mentioned, on office electronics, the TCO development from Sweden, and the GEC or the EPIT from US, and so on. And on food, we have some that have, as I mentioned, this on the way to a Planet Proof in Netherlands, and our colleagues in Sri Lanka, they started with dairy products. And others are having more focus on green public procurement, and also included then in for instance, in Chinese Taipei and Korea, the eco-label products are mentioned in the GPP official strategies adopted by the governments. How many percent must be eco-labeled? And then it's referring to these type 1 eco-labels. And so what we do is that we're making the complex information simple to use. Simple to use by the buyer, by the producer, manufacturer, or importer. And the standards behind this can be found, it's public, and you also can, as anyone, take part in the revision of the standards when they come up for regular revision. But it is still not easy to prove. It is not easy to fulfill the criteria requirements. It is only for the best products. So my reflections on when looking on the ETV initiative, the communication end should be somehow referred, I think, to the ISO 14020 series, and that would be then a certified claim, environmental claim, that per definition now in the new 14020 version of our standard will be published within a few weeks. And there's definitions that also for these kind of claims, those old type 2 claims, they have to have a program behind which you show, so that you can show for the market actors what are the basis for that information. And it is important to have this life cycle perspective. I think the example mentioned in the introduction about the company that recycle plastics without no water in use, but then the question arises immediately in a mind of life cycle perspective, that how about the energy then, and how about the quality of the end product, and so on. So it's the life cycle perspectives are there both in EPD and in eco labels, and the difference between them, the two of them, is mostly that the eco label is only for the best ones. An EPD you can do on anything. I've seen the EPD for the Ray-Ban sunglasses, and I've seen the EPD for the nuclear power from the Swedish producer Vattenfall. So it's the environmental information is there, but it's not telling the level. The eco labels tells the level that it is among the best within the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lund, for your presentation and also for the synergies. I'm sure we will come back to you with some questions as they are coming up in the chat box quite actively. Thank you for that. And our last presenter I would just like to introduce, and that is Mr. Lennart Schleier from Germany. And he will be presenting us on the premium environmental management with EMAS. The floor is yours, Mr. Schleier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. I think we're a bit late with the time, but I will try to speed up a bit and that you have enough time for having some questions. First slide I will go over because you already introduced myself. Thank you very much to this. I'm not sure how much you are familiar with EMAS, and you have seen on the title of presentation, I'm talking about the premium environmental management system, and the question obviously is why premium? I think most of you are more or less familiar with the ISO 14001, and there are a lot of similarities actually, and I will have a closer look on this with you in the next few minutes and try to explain what is EMAS, because I regularly see that many people are not that familiar with EMAS, and I just want to point out some of the differences, some formal differences and some differences in the context. You already heard of some details in the first presentation, what is different to EMAS compared to ETV, for example. EMAS, first of all, you see the 4 words here, Environmental Management Audit Scheme. It was published in 1993. In Germany, actually, it came 2 years later. And you know probably that the ISO 40001 came in 1996, so 3 years later. There have been revisions, like with other schemes or other standards, also with EMAS in 2001 and 2009. There also have been revisions of the annexes. The annexes are quite important in the EMAS scheme because there are important requirements. For example, Annex 2 contains all ISO 40001 requirements. How many companies are going for EMAS? I have some figures here which are from last summer, so more or less new. It was about 4,000 organizations in the European Union with about 12,000, a bit more than 12,000 sites. So that means some of the organizations have more than one site in the scheme. It is open for nearly all sectors. It wasn't in the beginning. In the beginning, it was only for production sectors, but with 2001 revision, it was open also for service providers. As you can see here, the biggest sectors: waste collection, construction, metal products, wholesale, education, chemicals, and so on. You can also see a difference in the countries. What I have put here is not, maybe you can see it quickly when you compare the figures up there. It's not the number of organizations, but the number of sites. So Italy is here number 1. Because they have some organizations with a lot of sites, and if you put the whole per capita, per head, per person, it's a different scheme, or also per organization side difference. But you can see who are the biggest countries. Oh no, there is some mix-up. I see a mix-up in the presentation. I'm not sure. I can't see my slides anymore. I'm not sure if you can see this, but otherwise, I just go on. I've thought that we probably have most of the participants here are coming from Hungary, so I've made a list with some of the companies in Hungary who are within the EMAS scheme. It is actually last summer it was 26 organizations. Some of the names you will get all the slides later on. You will know, obviously, and I think I go on further with this. I'm not quite sure. Can I go myself here? No, but it's not my presentation, so it doesn't help.
Now we are trying to find your presentation.
I just go on because I think we are short of time. Yeah, so that's probably not a big problem. As with the other schemes you heard before, also with EMAS is a voluntary scheme. It is something special because it is a regulation. It's a European regulation, and I think it's the only regulation that I know, which is really act, which is voluntarily. And one special thing, there is one other scheme in the European Union which is also voluntary, and we just mentioned this in the speech before, which is the eco. But the difference between the eco-label and EMAS maybe is obvious. Eco-label is on products and services, and EMAS is on organizations. So it is the only scheme that is voluntarily as a regulation within the European toolbox of environment policy, more or less. You know, also some other tools which are mandatory either on a product level, for example, you know, the REACH regulation, the RoHS, WEEE as a waste of electric equipment, for example. So there are several mandatory policy tools. There's also one on organizational level, as you know, it's the Industrial Emissions Directive, for example, is a mandatory tool, but EMAS is voluntarily on an organizational level, and that makes it some kind of unique. When we look at the differences, I would look first at the formal differences between 14001 and EMAS. And as I said, first of all, it's a piece of regulation, while the ISO 40001 is obviously is a standard, it's an international standard. It makes a difference, for example, for an organization like us, because as an organization like our organization, we can directly put our ideas, our thoughts, our expectations into the process of the revision of EMAS. That is possible. In theory, it is also possible in the ISO world, but it's much, much harder. And we know what we're talking about because we're doing this for more than 20 years in our organization. We're trying to work in both schemes, in the ISO world and also in the EMAS world. Within EMAS world, with working together with our ministry, but also with the European Commission, is much easier. I can tell you this.
Sorry, Leonard, just to
yes.
We kindly ask our Polish colleagues to find the right presentation because this is not the one.
Yeah. So what I shall do? Shall I try to share my? Oh, there it is again.
Yes,
okay,
there is.
Then
Thank
I
you
just
very
go
much.
on. I can go on now. Okay, good. Okay, there we had just the picture with mandatory and voluntary schemes, product level, organizational level. I just mentioned these. You know the CLP, probably you know this about labeling and packaging. And here we come now to the formal differences, and that's where I just stopped. As I said, okay, with one difference, regulation versus a private standard. One interesting thing, and I placed a question in the chat here, with EMAS, you do have a register. We have a national register, but we also have a European register. So you can look up each registration. You can look up which company has been registered by which verifier. So it's quite transparent. And that is one thing, one of the values of EMAS is transparency, actually. Just by the wording, there's a small difference. We talk about certification in the ISO world, but we talk about the registration with EMAS, and actually it's 3 steps. It's a verification of the management system, it's a validation of an environment statement, and it is a registration as a final step that is a bit similar like the certification, but only a bit similar. The focus is slightly different. We talked today already about environment performance. With the ISO, you know, it's more about system focus. Here, it's more about the performance focus. You can see that mainly on data and figures, key performance indicators, things like this. One other formal difference is that EMAS has a logo, and you're only allowed to use a logo if you have a registration number, or if you want to make only general advertising for EMAS, but not for your company, then you can use it without a logo. But usually you have to use it with a logo. For ISO, you know there are several logos you can find on Google, but none of them are official, more or less. So there's usually from some certifying companies. There is also one informal difference that I see and feel mainly in Italy, in Spain, and in Germany. And that is that we do have communities. That is, we do have some EMAS clubs where organizations meet regularly to exchange ideas and experiences. I'm not aware of similar clubs or something like this coming together in the ISO world. So that's an informal difference. But now let's come to the contents, which are different. And the first thing is you see an asterisk here, and the asterisk refers to that all requirements from the ISO standard are in the annex of the EMAS regulation, Annex 2 actually. The European Commission is paying some money to the International Standard Organization to be able to have these contents in the annex. And that means everybody who goes for EMAS has to fulfill the requirements of ISO 40001. That means it is not an either or, but it's an additional, it's a plus thing. And the question is, what is the plus? The plus is first off that you have to bit stronger focus also in the ISO 40001. You know, you should focus on performance, but here it's a bit stronger in the wording. In the Annex 2, there's also the additional requirements defined to the ISO 40001, and in 2 points they focus stronger on the performance. That is first the policy, that is quite simple, but the second thing is about objectives. There is some extra requirements regarding the improvement in performance when it comes to your environment program. There is a management representative that is requested. That is not a big thing usually. It's quite simple to achieve. Then there we have an environment review, which is interesting because it is more or less similar to the 40001, but is a bit more detailed how to do it. And it's actually about what you see here. Maybe you know this by heart. The 4.1 is the context of an organization, 4.2 is the stakeholders, and 6.1 is the environment aspects. And this is very similar to ISO 40001, but with some more detailed requirements how to do it, first of all. And second, EMAS is requesting to do this at the beginning before you start putting up your environment management system, to start with these points. That is a minor thing. What is really a big challenge, and we come to this in the next slide, is legal compliance. I will talk about this quickly. Employee involvement is usually not a big problem. You can do this more or less easily. And you have to do an environment report, what's called environment statement. And this is also a second challenge. We come to this in a second. Okay, I go on. And how we do this, the whole step, how is the process? The process is that you start with this review. As I said, that's the context, the stakeholders, and the aspects. And then you start to put up your system. And you're aware with the requirements of the 40001. We talk about roles and responsibilities, about procedures, and so on, documentation, emergency planning, and. You do an internal audit, and you do a management review. Sorry for the abbreviation here. I'm not sure if it was clear to you. So management review. And then you prepare your environment statements. Very often you can start with this a bit earlier, but that is the latest point when you have to do it actually. And then there is an external audit. It's a bit similar like with the 40001, but we do have here not only a check of the system, but also a check of the environmental statement, whether it's complete and whether the data and the figures are correct. So you need some proof, some evidence of this. And then after this, there is a piece of registration. I do have some additional slides in here, so I don't go through all 16 slides. You might see here down there in the right right lower corner, because it's some backup slides, but you can have a closer look. What does it mean, the legal compliance? And finally, you publish this statement. So that is a process. And now maybe the question, what is difficult and what are the benefits? What do I get if I go for EMAS? So honestly, most people don't like to talk about this, but I usually put my finger on this because ensuring legal compliance, that most people say, yes, we are in legal compliant, but I have so many so many cases where I go in detail as a verifier, go into the facilities looking for the documents, and I find a lot of points which are not in compliance with regulations. And you see here is, I put it also on the benefits, because I do know some companies who go for EMAS because they say it's the strongest tool to ensure legal compliance, because study is coming and it's really checking this. And as a verifier, I have a different risk compared to doing certifications as an auditor in 14001. I'm risking my license, my accreditation personally. And so this is something really the most critical points in my cases that I see actually. And sometimes it's about a lot of money, where companies need to invest a lot of money to be in legal compliance. And that's sometimes not as easy as most people would think it is. The statement is some efforts in the beginning, the first time, to collect all the data, to calculate the data, to calculate CO2 emissions, and that is not so easy in the first time, but usually after the second and third time, it's much easier. Then we also have to ask for some points about indirect aspects and you can imagine that for some companies, they don't like to talk about all the things because some things are a bit more critical. And this transparency can be a challenge for some companies. With EMAS, we have some points that need to be addressed. And so we cannot say, okay, we leave it away. That is a problem, and that sometimes also is the case for companies not to go for EMAS, because they want a bit of transparency, but not too much transparency. And then they say, okay, I don't want to report about this, and that is one thing. In some countries, we don't have so many verifiers. In Germany, we do have many verifiers, but many of those are close to retirement now. And depending which branch you are, so this license is usually depending on the kind of business you're doing, or whether it's chemical or whether it's metal processing and so on. And then there might be, in some cases, only a few verifiers who are licensed to do this. And then to find the right person can be a bit tricky sometimes. What you get credibility, because the verifier has to say, yes, I haven't found any legal problem. Yes, the statement is true, it's complete, and I've checked the data and information. And this is plausible, what I see. So you get transparency. You get, of course, the same benefits that you get from 14001, because you're doing the same requirements, but you also get some more transparency maybe with this. In Germany and also in Italy, I don't know if for all member states of the European Union, you get a lot of incentives. In Germany, it's different from a federal level and from a state level. From state to state, it's slightly different depending where you are in Germany. You also sometimes get, even on a regional level, you get some incentives. I know many examples from Italy in this, which is very interesting. And there's one small interesting thing for small organizations, because for them it can be sometimes even easier than 14001, even that you have to have the same requirements. You have to fulfill everything from 14001, but you can go for a slightly longer period, not 3 years, but 4 years for the certification, and not be there every year, but only every second year. And this is depending also whether you have environmental significant problems or significant risks, then you cannot do this. But otherwise, in some cases, if you are really small and you don't have big risks, you don't have big impacts, then you can extend it. This can be make it a bit easier as a life for small companies. So in total, we can say what EMAS is about is 14001 plus, I would say, or it is performance, and that is actually performance in legal points and performance in environmental aspects. Depending on what you're doing, you have to address direct and indirect aspects, and think about probable indicators. Some indicators are given that you have to go for, and some others you can choose additionally. And so with the whole thing, with a check, then you will gain credibility. that was my quick presentation. I wanted to do a quick presentation that you can ask some questions. There are some backup slides you can have a look later on, so we don't need this now. And I say thank you very much so far and looking forward to your questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schleicher, for your presentation. And thank you for the slides as well. And as we are really running out of time, what I'm going to do, we've just collected the questions in a document so that you can see them all together in front of you. I will just quickly read them out just all together so that you hear them. And then we will give the floor to our speakers once again, just for everybody, just for 1 or 2 minutes, really, for a very short, quick response. Because we will close the webinar at 1:45 the latest. So let's see the questions. We have 8 at the moment. When we see the EPD logo, what could we know about the products or service performance? Number 2, how long does it take to get EPD and how much does it typically cost? Number 3, where can one find the numbers of EPDs? For example, how many EPDs have been prepared in which country? Is there any register? So these so far go to Balázs. Then number 4, to what extent is the manufacturing technology performance considered in the criteria used for verification or certification in eco-labels? Can any institution apply for being a verifier of application for eco-label? These ones will go to Mr. Lund. What are the requirements for an institution to create an EPD platform? Balázs again. Is there a project to simplify this context, which currently looks rather fragmented? Number 7, and the last question is, during the audit, are you also checking the performance of technologies involved, for example, in the manufacturing process? Which methods of proof do you recognize for that purpose? So our dear speakers, the floor is yours. Balázs, I think you should be the first one to just a quick response to these questions, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you see an EPD logo, it just says that this product has the certification. So its environmental performance has been calculated and verified. You have to go to the EPD document where you can get all the details about the environmental performance. Second one, how long to get an EPD? Of course, you have to prepare an LCA study, and then you have to prepare the EPD, and then you go for the verification process. So, of course, it can take months, but of course, it depends on. There are solutions to do it quicker, but however, yeah, let's say that it's some months to get an EPD. Costs, I cannot tell you. It is, of course, there are different prices, different solutions. All program operator has its own costs. All consultant has its own costs. My experiences, this is also like a trend. It seemed to be very costly some years ago. Now, when there are more clear driving forces on the market, cost is a less relevant aspect. Companies understand that it is needed, and it worth paying for an EPD because they get out benefits from it. Registries, I on that slide about the construction products, you have the link to a register about construction products. For the rest, you need to go to the EPD sites of different EPD program operators, and you can see their lists, and maybe there are some numbers there, but globally I do not have this kind of information. Other question about EPD requirements to create an EPD platform. I suppose it is about EPD programs. So if someone wants to an organization to create an EPD program, here you have to go to check the ISO 40025 standard. It is clearly described what are the requirements, and mainly they are tasks. So you have to create a program, you have to create general instructions, you have to manage the PCR developments, to involve stakeholders. But my quick answer is to go to the standard. Okay, maybe I leave the other questions to the others. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Balázs, for your answers. And we will ask now Mr. Lön to please make your final comments and answers to the questions just here. Thank you.
Yes, to question number 4 about the manufacturing technology. The eco-labels have been considered and discussed also in the World Trade Organization, and there they are very obvious that one should not be discriminating technologies, defining which technologies are accepted and which are not. So there are definitions of what are legal requirements on process and production methods, so-called legal PPMs, and that means that we cannot say that one innovative methodology is better than everything else, because it is for the best. It is at the end the product. We always do site audits, so we learn about the manufacturing processes and so on, and the definitions and the requirements are in the and have to be documented in accordance with the criteria. And then for the about the question of being a verifier of applications for eco-label, it's not an open process. Verification and certification are normally, mostly among our members, they are made in-house. We are following the ISO 17065 requirements for certifiers within the eco-labeling schemes. Some members outsource the verification based on agreements with some certifying bodies. Like, for instance, in the German Blue Angel has an agreement with RAL to do it, and the Australian has with BSI Australia and 2 other companies. But it's not an open. But then for anyone, naturally, you can function as a consultant for a manufacturer important in helping making the documentation or bringing up the documentation to making the application to the eco-labeling body. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lön, for the answers. And Mr. Schleier, please answer question number 8 and make your final comments. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's question number 8 that you're asking for. During audits, the question is here whether I check the performance of technology. I have to check technology if it's based on some legal requirements. So because I need to check if there's any hint of any legal violation. Additionally, an organization can decide that they want me to check some technology. And when they put anything in the annual statement that gives, let's say, a statement about performance of technology, then I need to check whether this statement is true. Well, it can be a sentence, could be a paragraph, it could be half a page or a whole page. But then I have to check this, and I need to ask for evidence, for proof. I need to understand how they calculate things. So I have to go down. Is this seems to be true, but if they don't do it, if they don't want to put it in there, then I will focus on first of legal compliance, and second, there's one more thing, and that is also a check we have. As you know, this from 14,001, we do have to prioritize the environmental impact. So we have to say which of the impacts is significant. And if you say, for example, energy use is significant, then we will have a close look at the energy consumption of the technologies which are involved, and we will check, okay, what is the plans to improve this, and have you improved it, and how have you improved it? And so, yes, we do it partly, but maybe is not the same way as we do with ETV. but I could imagine there could be some overlap, of course. And you can imagine also, depending what the organization is doing, it can be, let's say, so on the production process, can be also on a product level, can be on a service level, it can be on anything, because the question is, what is the significant environmental impact of the organization? And so these are things that need to be described, need to be displayed, and where I go in. So yes, I think there is some overlap probably for sure between ETF, so ETV and EMAS in some cases, but it's very much depending on the process. And yeah, and which methods of proof? So in some cases, I have to go directly to the installation. I have to see the installation, especially when it comes to legal things. Otherwise, I need to see invoices, I need to see documents, calculations, I need to understand the calculations. And it has to be transparent also for a reader, that a reader can understand what they display. And so we need to give the sources of some factors when we have some factors for calculating things. So I hope that I have answered the questions in a suitable way as you want to have it. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, and in the meantime, we've got another question from Katalin. Just very, very quickly, if any of the speakers would like to comment on that, can you confirm the synergies among the schemes that ETV can provide information and data about environmental performance for the other schemes? Just maybe in 1 or 2 minutes, if you would like to refer back to that. It's open to any of the speakers. Thank you. Just in very briefly.
Yeah, maybe then I just start, as I said already. So with ETV, we have it with the environment product regulation. This was a big discussion already in our German EMAS advisory board. And also there, we do have the opportunity, because there is an article in the EMAS scheme, actually, it's Article 10, which is providing that if you put part of this information on a product, for example, in the statement, then I have to check it because it's in the statement. I need to have asked for proof. I need to understand it, and then later on you can take it out again and use it with the EMAS logo and with this proof that this piece of information is being checked. But I have to be honest. You can define as an organization which part of information you put in there. So that means, compared to the product regulation, you can leave out other pieces of information. And with this, there is a risk of cherry picking, to be honest. So there is an overlap, yes, but it can be a bit of cherry picking, that you as an organization decide which information you want to have verified and which you don't. And with this, it's maybe partly with a similar quality, but not completely. And I think with the labels, I don't see much synergies, but some small synergies. And with ETV, I already mentioned that. Okay, thanks so far from my side.
I could add the last thing about how eco-labels are reflected in environmental management systems, is that when we have requirements for a certified environmental management system in the production side, we refer to EMAS or ISO 14001, or then also there are some smaller national systems like what they call the environmental lighthouse here in Norway. But anyway, so there is a synergy, but it doesn't bring directly the eco-label. And then about the EPD, the problem is that the information behind, I mean, the final result from an EPD and the final presentation, that doesn't help us, because we have to go back to the initial information, and that has shown to be very difficult to get out from the producer, because they are then referring to business protected information and so on. So the EPDs don't bring much of help to the eco-labeling system. I hope that it could be the other way around, but I don't think either that is, because we are not using our parameters that we cover in the EPD system and in eco-label in the same way.
Yeah, okay. So
your final comments, yes.
Yeah, okay. I think my task is to talk about EPD and ETV, the synergies. I think I tried to summarize in my presentation that basically from one side, yes, EPD world companies that develop EPDs needs data about technologies, manufacturing processes, and needs improvement on the long term. So I think here is the connection with ETV, but I think also the ETV companies can have access through the EPDs available about environmental performance of a lot of technologies and products with a life cycle approach. So I think, yeah, this is let's say that the connection, I believe.
Thank you very much, Balázs, and I would like to thank all our speakers for their presentations today and their contribution to our trying to find the synergies between ETV and the different schemes. Thank you for staying with us all throughout, because we are a little bit behind the time that was scheduled. And also a big thank you to our participants who stayed with us as well. And please bear with us. Let's keep in touch. And please visit our website, www.LIFEproETV.com, as we will share the recording with you, and we will provide the answers to the questions and also the presentations of our speakers. Thank you very much and have a nice rest of the day. Take care. Bye now.